Has the grounding of the trainers interfered with the flight testing and the use of the LEM training?
Has the grounding of the trainer?
He's talking about the LLRB and TV.
Oh, that hasn't influenced our training at all, because we're not actually training for a lunar landing type of mission, and that trainer was designed specifically to handle a lunar landing mission.
Right behind.
Considering the training time on the earlier Apollo missions, how many hours training has training on a separate spacecraft in addition to the CSM added to your schedule?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer, because I don't think that the number of hours or those kind of things are the things that really concern you when you get to a mission like this. I think the thing that we're really concerned with is training for events. If we could do the transposition, docking, and extraction of the LEM 20 times, that's the thing we're looking for. We're trying to train for the event. If we get in the simulator and work for 500 hours and only accomplish 20 of these, or work for 50 hours and accomplish 20 of them, I think we get the same out of it. It's very complicated to try to test two vehicles and train for two vehicles, because the time really doesn't change. There's still 24 hours in the day regardless of how many spacecraft. There's so much time that you have from the preceding launch to yours, and while that time doesn't change, the training requirement does, and I think that we just have to make it all fit.
Back there.
The time of the LEM separation to the rendezvous, what is the elapsed time, please?
Why don't you answer this? Okay.
Slowly. Let me get the exact.
It's
over 6 hours.
About 6 hours.
On the side.
It probably seemed like 3 or 4 days.
Could you describe what you consider to be the most critical or dangerous maneuvers and what the risks are?
Dave, why don't you tell them?
If we thought this was dangerous and it was critical and there were high risk, we wouldn't do it. There are very important maneuvers and very essential maneuvers for the development of the program towards a lunar landing. But I think we've assured ourselves that not only does the hardware work properly, but the techniques involved in utilizing the hardware minimize the risk or the dangers.
I mean, relatively within the mission, which of the maneuvers are more critical?
Well, obviously, the untethered EVA with a LEM probably is, because the LEM goes to 90 miles. It has no heat shield and no tether. So it's essential that the LEM returns to the heat shield. I would guess you'd call that probably the most critical phase.
I tell you, it's very difficult to answer questions like that, because we're looking for a program, an Apollo program type of evaluation here. And if we can't do the last thing. We can't do re-entry until we've done launch. And we can't do the LEM stuff until we've done transposition and docking. It's very difficult to do this mission if the preceding step doesn't work. So if you're at step 16, if you want to do step 16 and you're at step 15, 15 by definition becomes the most important and critical phase. And if you get to step 1, that's the most critical and important phase. And if that's completed, then the next step is. There isn't any most critical phase. Each one must follow the other.
Right here.
On the extravehicular activity, you will leave the LEM, but you will not actually enter the command module?
Rusty, why don't you take this one?
Who asked the question, please?
I did.
Okay, I couldn't see who was talking.
I'm sorry.
No, that's not your fault. That's correct. We will leave the LEM, and I will enter the command module up to about my waist. And at that point, we will consider that the rest would have followed.
Well, then the hatch will be open.
The hatch in the command module will be open.
And you will go about halfway in and then come back out. Is that
That's right. Just to the point where I can rest, and particularly rest your hands. You see, with pressurized gloves, I might mention that the EVA is conducted along a handrail, a series of handrails. There is no other means of attachment. I have a lifeline which will be attached to me. It provides me with no functions other than to restrict me from getting more than 40 feet or so away from the LEM in case I let go. Now, I don't intend to let go. The whole maneuver is done hand over hand along these handrails, And as a result, by the time you get, you spend 15 minutes or so squeezing a handrail with a set of pressurized gloves, you tend to tire your arm muscles. So that the thing to do here at the command module end is get myself into a position where I can hold on with my feet or my legs, so to speak, and let go with my hands and relax. And when we have programmed rest periods in the EVA, we found from experience in Gemini that it's very important to program these rest periods. And this is all programmed in. And following the rest period, I then make the transfer back. But I don't actually get into it beyond the point of say, my waist or so. And the reason, of course, for this is that we're demonstrating a contingency transfer for a lunar mission, in which case we don't have the PLSS on our backs. We have only what we call an oxygen purge system. It's a smaller emergency oxygen system. And of course, when you have this big portable life support system on your back, you're a good bit bigger and clumsier, and we don't want to run any unnecessary risks of damaging equipment.
I'll tell you what, let me expand on that just a little bit. Whenever we ban the LEM, and we have to come back contingency outside, we just don't run over and open up the command module door. I think it might be worthwhile if Dave discussed the things that actually have to be done in the command module every time we get in the LEM. Why don't you briefly run through that stuff, Dave?
Well, actually, each time Jim and Rusty go into the LEM, we prepare the command module for the extravehicular transfer or the contingency transfer outside, because we close the tunnel out each time. By that I mean we put the probe and drogue in the tunnel and close the hatches in order to maintain two integral vehicles separated as far as the pressure vessels are concerned, which means that the command module on each of the three LEM days, if you will, the systems day, the EVA day, and the rendezvous day, has to be prepared to accept an extravehicular transfer. This means that the center couch is removed and stowed to allow the volume necessary to get Rusty and his PLSS and his OPS and his LCG and his EMU and all those things that he carries with him. To get him inside takes up quite a volume. So we stow the center couch, and we're all wearing our suits without helmets and gloves, but it's merely a matter of putting the helmets and gloves on and then depressurizing the command module through a relief valve in the hatch and getting out of the left couch where I normally am, opening the hatch to its full extent, and then getting to a position where I'm out of the way, yet I can still assist in the ingress. But the command module has the capability of being completely depressurized in a short period of time, and the hatch, as you know, is designed now so that it's outward opening. It's very simple to operate and very reliable. If we have to do the extravehicular transfer, once they get inside, we can close the hatch and repressurize in about 6 to 10 minutes. So we have a very good capability in the command module.
Jim, from what you know about it, are there any basic differences in technique between the way the Russians dock two-man vehicles and the way we're going to dock two-man vehicles?
Well, from what I know about it, I'd have to say no. Unfortunately, in the last month or so, I've been pretty tied up with my own mission, and I don't read the newspapers or watch television nearly as much as I used to, and I don't know an awful lot about it. I'd have to look in some more detail on how they did it.
Have they not given us any hint at all about how they did it that's filtered through to you?
Not very much. I've read a little bit in Time, a little bit in the newspapers, and a little bit on TV, and some of that has been conflicting, as you probably know. I have to wait. As soon as our flight's over, I'm going to go do a research program on it, and I'll be able to tell you.
He read about their motorcade, too.
Yeah.
Jules?
I hope we have a better welcome.
Jim, I have 47 questions here, because you said to keep them all to here, right? Okay, no, seriously.
You don't get to go through all 47. You can get one and then somebody else, and then you can get...
Stay here all afternoon. First of all, there have been some reports that you three may take off without spacesuits on. Is that true or not?
Dave, why don't we just run through the list here?
You say which who will wear them and who won't, right? Okay.
All three of us will wear suits.
Okay. Jim, this flight seems terribly complex and far busier than Apollo 8. How do you characterize it in your own mind?
Well, I don't know. We've been living with it for a long time. We've had this particular flight plan since about November of 1966. Like, as Paul mentioned earlier, we've had a lot of different vehicles assigned to it, but the basic concept of the mission hasn't changed since November of 1966. We worked with it for a long time, and at times, when we first looked at it, looked pretty easy. Then we got into it and it looked impossible. Then we start working out the problems, and it becomes feasible. And I guess it just depends where you're standing at up and down cycle. I think we'll be able to do the mission. We have 2 good spacecraft, I believe. We have good equipment. I think by the time we launch, we will have worked out those procedures that have to be worked out in great detail, and there's some of the things we won't even be able to make up our minds on until we get into orbit, to look to see how things are. I think that we'll be able to accomplish it.
Earl, right here in front.
What sorts of failures can you tolerate in this mission and still be confident that the whole system can land a man on the moon, 2 men on the moon, and return them?
Rusty, why don't you take this?
I think it's a question of primarily what nature the failures that will occur, I wouldn't even say that might occur, that will occur, take. If we have a failure of a major system, and on analysis it proves to be a basic design problem, then of course we could end up with a significant delay. If we have a momentary overcurrent in a secondary S-band transponder and it goes off the line due to a faulty fuse or something of that kind, it doesn't mean anything. And I think the possibilities range all the way from no delay whatever or no impact whatever, all the way to the kind of thing where we're not going to land until 1973. And it depends on what happens. Now, of course, as you go through that spectrum from one end to the other, the probability goes from very high that you're going to have some kind of a minor problem to extremely low that you're going to have one of these basic design problems. I think that the things we're going to learn from the mission, which are going to assist us most or give us the most confidence in getting to the moon on time, are lie more on this flight, strangely enough, in the procedural end and in the data handling end of the total picture than on the hardware end. I think it is a design verification mission as far as the hardware is concerned, but I think that the point Jim made earlier on handling all these various sources of data is generally not appreciated. And it is unique to this mission in that this is the first mission which touches on the problem. And in some sense, this mission is the last mission, or maybe the last mission, which faces quite as severe a problem in that sense. In that, you see, on the way to the moon, you're in constant contact with the Earth. In lunar orbit, you're in contact for long periods of time, a little over an hour at a time, and then another slightly less than an hour out of contact. On our mission, you see, we're in contact with the ground for 5 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 7 minutes here, 15 there, 1 minute here, so that we're continually going in and out of station coverage, and the data handling and manipulation becomes very complex because of this. So that I really think that that we're going to end up learning more on that end of it than hopefully, than on the hardware end.
Just to follow that up, as long as you mention probabilities, what is the probability of your achieving a mission in this particular mission which will permit the next step, the next flight to take place and to go to the moon within the next 2 or 3 flights?
Oh, I would say it's very high.
Out of 10?
Well, you sound like Dave Scott now. Every time I tell him something, he says, "What % confidence do you have in that?" I don't know. It's hard to say, but I would let me just say extremely high. I'd be very surprised if we find any kind of a problem which will prevent the next mission from going as planned.
Tell you, one thing that should be kept in mind is that if we do have a problem, it's then the responsibility of NASA management to decide what the follow-on missions will be. So we're to gather the data, and then there will be a judgment made on that. Obviously, if it's 100% successful, there need not be much more judging done. But if it's not successful, then there's a lot of judging that has to be done.
What percent confidence do you have?
Somewhere between 0 and 100. How about that?
One point, Earl, in this data handling, we've got 2 vehicles now. We're handling real-time data in a highly accelerated mode, much faster than the Gemini situation. So for the ground, it's an interesting MCC is a...
So interestingly enough, we get our data down on S-band, and when we're out at 100 miles, we sometimes get in positions where the ground can't track both vehicles simultaneously with a single S-band antenna, and we're transmitting on different frequencies. So it is a real problem for the ground. They have to make sure they have multiple antennas at the sites where they need to get multiple data down. And it's not just an airborne problem, it's a ground problem too.
Mark Bloom's going way in the back. Put your hand up, Mark, so you can see.
It strikes me that, except perhaps for Mr. Schweikert's EVA, we're kind of ignoring everything we've learned about timelines on this flight and really packing an incredible amount in the first 5 days. And then you've got the other four odd days after that. What are your priorities in real-time flight planning for getting rid of things in this busy flight plan if you get tired and so forth? Is EVA the first to go, for instance?
Let me take that one. No, as a matter of fact, as I mentioned earlier, if you're on step 16, you're looking at that step. There are some minor things that can go, but obviously we can't do anything until we launch. So that's first priority. Second priority is that we have to be able to do the transposition and docking and get that LEM out of the S4B, because if we don't do that, then we don't have any LEM to evaluate or any joint systems. Now, we can't operate from the LEM until we've checked out the systems in it. So obviously the thing we have to do is to check out the system, which is what we do on the third day anyway. I think that we have a set of priorities that allow us to scratch little things here and there, but we have to sort of take these things a step at a time.
Let me point out to Mr. Bloom
the busiest flight plan we've ever had.
Pardon?
It is probably the busiest flight plan we've ever had, at least the first 5 days anyway, on any space mission.
It's pretty busy, yes.
Jim might dispute that. The first couple of revs, the Gemini 4.
Yeah. But is it possible that the last 2 or 3 days might be eliminated from this mission?
That doesn't eliminate much complexity, Mr. Bloom. That's our resting time, and you want to take that away from us, huh?
Yeah. We have to rest up for re-entry.
But let me point out one constraint that we have, which may not be generally appreciated. The lunar module operates on batteries as opposed to fuel cells, which we use in the command service module. Once these batteries are activated, we have a very limited lifetime. We do not have the capability to shut this thing down and say insert 1 day of doing nothing into the middle of the flight plan in order to give you more flexibility. The reason we don't is that another reason, in particular the one that involves time, is associated with the supercritical helium, which is stored on board the LEM as pressurization for the propellant tanks. The supercritical helium tends to build up pressure as time goes on, and the way the mission is designed right now with 3 LEM days in succession, we're getting into the upper end of the operating region. If we inserted 1 extra day in there, the expected heat leak into that system would be such as to raise the pressure above the relief point on the tank. So that you see we are forced in a way to exercising the LEM within those first 5 days of the mission, or else jettisoning it. Now that's the reason that we have almost all of the activity, as you pointed out, in those first 5 days of the mission. But we have really no choice if we are to accomplish the mission.
One follow. If you eliminated the the apps burn to depletion, wouldn't you have the extra day with the supercritical helium?
No.
Right over here.
You mentioned the TV transmission during the EVA. What other TV transmissions are planned, and have you got any skits or unusual, novel things that we might look forward to?
We don't have any skits, and I hope we don't have any novel and new things.
I think it is a camera.
We have 2 TV passes scheduled. The first one will come on the 3rd day. It's the systems day. And I can almost assure you that this is not going to be very glamorous TV. We don't have the capability to mount the camera properly inside the LEM. It wasn't designed for that. And we're going to do the best we can, but in essence what we're going to do is hook the TV camera in the back of the spacecraft, point it toward the front where we're operating, and let it go. And you're not going to hear much from us except what we're doing, because as Mr. Bloom observed, we've got a lot to do in there, and I would expect you're going to see the normal day in the life of the LEM, much more than the Jim, Dave, and Rusty show.
Well, we won't have any viewfinder on the camera.
No, there won't be.
On the camera. Shall we see it?
During the EVA, will you see what, sir?
No, and will the EVA be televised?
The EVA transfer itself will not be. The second time that we have a TV pass will occur during the EVA. It's during the second day pass, not second day, but the second day pass during the EVA. We do have a TV pass at that point, and we're still working out the final details, but it appears that the camera will be mounted on the porch and will be looking up across the docked vehicles, and it will be stationary at that point. Hand-holding it is
flying or not?
That's not definite yet.
I don't think they've lined up a sponsor yet, really, Orlando. Right here.
Will Colonel McDivitt or Colonel Scott be filming the EVA transfer? If it won't be televised, will it be filmed, or will they be taking pictures of it? Just what will be done?
Steve, why don't you describe it?
Yes, we have... one of the purposes of this transfer is to evaluate it from an engineering standpoint, to make sure that we're doing the right thing, that Rusty's taking the right path at the right angles, and that he can do it most efficiently in the shortest period of time without endangering his suit from the many protuberances on the limb. Therefore, we would like to take movies of the transfer from both the command module side and the limb side. In order to do this, Rusty will mount a camera outside on the porch rails before he transfers. I will mount a camera on the inside of the open hatch, which points along the path. Both cameras will be pointing along the transfer path, one from the limb, one from the command and service modules. And when he starts his transfer, we'll activate both cameras, and hopefully we'll get the entire transfer from the limb to the command module from 2 viewpoints. And as soon as we get back, you'll get to see them all.
Right in the middle there.
As you pointed out before, when the 2 spacecraft are docked, the service module is controlling the attitude. Could you tell me where the center of rotation would be if that combination begins to move in pitch or yaw? I guess it doesn't make any difference. And approximately how high a rate you could stand before you would have to separate?
Well, Dave's an old expert at that.
To answer, the CG is approximately under the couch in the command module of the docked vehicles. But to answer your question, really, you must remember that this is about 90,000 pounds when we start out, and it's very heavy. And if one of these relatively little thrusters when we start, and they're relatively big thrusters when we finish with the ascent stage, a 100-pound thruster on a 90,000-pound vehicle doesn't move it very much. And we learned a few things in Gemini about how you wire thrusters, and we don't expect that. We don't expect that to be any problem. But
right in front of Carl.
Let me try that again. Suppose you had an accidental vending from any of the number of engines that you have all over that combination that induced the spin rate, or something else that induced the spin rate. How high would you let that spin rate get if you were not able to bring it down before you would cast the lunar module loose?
Yeah, I guess we've never really looked at it specifically because the structural integrity of the vehicles is very good. We can burn the service propulsion system from one end of the combination and the tunnel will hold together. We can burn the descent propulsion system from the other end of the structure and they hold together. So it's very unlikely that a spin rate would tear them apart. But at some point, I guess you'd say we have to separate for some reason, but I really don't know what the reason would be. We'd stop the rotation anytime any venting or a thruster failed. We've got plenty of time and enough different control systems and backups that I'm sure we could stop the rates. I guess I don't have a good answer for your question because it's
right in the middle, right?
I have a good answer for your question. When we have the LEM on the other end and we're not in it, all the thrusters are powered down, and there's no electricity applied to those things at all. And when we're in it, I don't think we want them to cast us off. So if we get into an uncontrolled situation like that and there's any implication that the LEM is out of control, then that means that it's manned, and I doubt seriously if Dave would be casting us off. I think we'd probably just sit there and figure out the problem regardless of what the rate was.
Could someone go into these golden slippers? What are they made of? What's their purpose?
They're made of fiberglass, I think. At least that's what they look like they're made of. And they're form-fitted to the boots on the spacesuit. And if I can take my hands here and set them up as my boots as I step into them, what you have to do is put your heels in first and then rotate your toes outward under a shelf sort of thing. Now that's an unnatural movement to be able to rotate a suit that way, so that in a relaxed position, once you get into them, you can simply let go and you're held there. It takes the place of magnetic shoes in space movies, you know.
Is there any Velcro on them? That's what I'm getting at.
There is no Velcro on them. It does not employ Velcro or magnetics or anything like that. It just employs the fact that you can't hold your feet pigeon-toed for very long without them springing out, and it takes advantage of that fact.
They are outside the lamp, right?
They are located on the LEM porch. In fact, let me just draw them right here.
They'll never see it.
That's okay.
There goes somebody's model.
Okay, they're located right there on the porch. And they're facing the vehicle, so that when I'm in the golden slippers, I'm standing there facing the front of the LEM. And just by using leg muscles and ankle muscles, I can essentially lay out flat off the porch, or I can stand all the way up against it. I mean, lean back and forth, or you can control yourself rather well. It's just like gluing your feet to the floor.
Put your feet in there.
I beg your pardon?
Put your feet in them.
That's right. You just put your feet in them, and then you let go and relax, and I can move all around and take pictures with the camera and that kind of thing. And Jim and I end up passing a good bit of equipment in and out of the hatch using this lifeline that I have. And that's the place that I'm normally located when we pass equipment in and out.
Harry?
Rusty, how will you get through the hatches? Do you have to squirm on your belly, or can you crawl on your hands and knees, or how much room do you have?
You don't have much room. However, there's no possibility of squirming on your belly or crawling because you're in zero gravity. So no matter what you do, you float. And it's a matter of turning at the right time and floating out in the right attitude. And we've practiced this. I spend a good deal of time underwater in a tank, 18-foot deep tank that we have in Houston, where we weight the suit so that it's neutrally buoyant. We have LEM and command module models underwater, and I go through this total EVA transfer and exercise quite often. And it's a matter of training to get yourself oriented in the right way to float out the hatch without hooking up on something. Now, in zero gravity, the tendency is that if you move slowly, that you can generally get through things like this without too much difficulty. But I must say that there is not much spare room getting out that front hatch with all this equipment on. Now, on the lunar surface, the technique is quite different because there you're, again, in a gravity field. Although it's 1/6 Earth gravity, nevertheless, you end up squirming around on your stomach and crawling in and out.
Well, with your hands, can you show us how you try to float? I mean, will you be belly down if...
Okay, yes, I can describe that, although it won't help much in photographs that you'll see because this will not really show on photographs, but I'm standing on the left side facing forward. And the first motion is to put my feet out through the hatch, essentially still facing forward. After I get my feet through the hatch, I rotate to the left, and as I do that, go down on my side so that now I'm facing over here with my head toward this end. That is, I can't do it very well here, gracefully anyway. And as I come out feet first with my toes pointing over toward the Saturn V model here. And as the top part of me gets out the hatch, I reach out with one hand and I have a hold of this handrail so that as I come out, I'm facing this direction, feet first, and I have a hold of the handrail. And my next step is to move down onto the ladder, the top of the ladder here, and place this sequence camera that Dave mentioned on the handrail. And at that point, I then move up onto the slippers, onto the porch, and get into the golden slippers. Okay?
Steve?
Rusty, not to try to produce your television program, but to try to produce your television program, is there any way you could back off far enough on the tether with the television camera to get a picture of both vehicles in the dock configuration?
Well, there is no way to back off on the tether. I have no means of locomotion other than holding on to a handrail with my hands. To safely and adequately maintain my body position without smashing into the LEM or tearing up an antenna or something of that kind, it takes two hands, and sometimes I wish I had three. But there's no way to hold a TV camera and to hold a handrail and to maintain a body position. The only capability I have would be in the golden slippers to handhold the camera. But I think from experience, and as a TV producer, you must agree with me, that the handheld TV has not been the best. And that's been under rather favorable conditions, that is, shirt sleeve, pressurized operations. In my case, you must realize, I'm in a pressurized spacesuit here where it's very difficult to move gently and to maintain steady positions, and under EVA conditions. So that in evaluating what we've seen so far, we're tending toward the conclusion that the best way to operate the TV is to fix it in place. And it will, however,